Welcome to Torah Tuesday. The Jacob story continues today. So let's recap what we've heard so far. Rebekah, wife of Isaac, was pregnant with twins who wrestled with each other in her womb. She heard from God that they will be pitted against each other for life, and eventually the older will serve the younger. Then when they are born, we have Jacob and we have Esau. Esau quickly becomes his dad's favorite. He's the firstborn, favored by his dad because Esau hunts and Isaac has a taste for wild game. And Jacob, he quickly becomes Rebekah's favorite because we're told he hangs around the tents, and I suppose that means that he helps with the laundry and with the cleaning and the cooking and that kind of thing. Jacob has already tricked Esau out of his birthright, and today we are going to hear how Jacob manages to trick Esau out of his deathbed blessing from his father Isaac. So let's pick up the story today that we've read in chapter 27 and 28. The story starts with Isaac summoning his favorite child because he is on his deathbed and he wants to give his favorite child the blessing. So he says, "Go out and hunt for some food and bring it to me and I'll bless you." Now, the standard practice was to give a deathbed blessing to all of your children at the same time. This is what we see happening at the end of Genesis when Jacob blesses his 12 sons. But Isaac isn't doing that. Obviously, he wants the preferential treatment, the blessing, to go to his favorite son. And it's important to note that Isaac was going blind as well. So Rebekah, she overhears this. Maybe she was standing outside the tent, but she won't have it. So she gets Jacob to kill some goats from the paddock, and Rebekah will cook them up for Isaac. And Jacob is to take the goats into his father Isaac, who is now blind, and trick him into giving Jacob the blessing instead of Esau. Jacob thinks it's not going to work. It sounds like a mad plan, Mum. Got to be crazy. But she comes up with this genius idea. He says, "I'm not hairy and I'm not smelly like Esau." And so Rebekah gets some of Esau's smelly clothes and puts them on Jacob. And she also takes the skin from the lamb that she has killed and she puts it on his arm so that now he feels as if he is hairy like Esau is. So Jacob is wearing an Esau costume. And then we get this amazing dialogue between Jacob and Isaac as he enters the tent. Let me just read it to you. He went in to his father and said, "My father." "Yes, my son," he answered. "Who is it?" Jacob says to his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn." Then Isaac said to Jacob, "Come near so I can touch you, my son, to know whether you really are my son Esau or not." So Jacob went close to his father, who touched him and said, "The voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau." And he did not recognize him, for his hands were hairy like those of his brother Esau, so he proceeded to bless him. Amazing drama. Moments after Jacob gets the blessing from Isaac, Esau comes in and offers the same thing. And that is the moment where Isaac realizes what has happened. He says, your brother Jacob, who's rightly named Jacob, remember it means deceiver, has stolen your blessing. And Isaac has no more blessing to give to Esau. So Esau is devastated. He cries and let out a bitter wail, "Bless me, Father," but Isaac had nothing for him. So Esau's fed up, and he says that once Isaac has died, he is going to kill his brother Jacob. But again, Rebekah overhears this. I don't know how she's doing this. I guess she's hovering around the tents, constantly listening to people. So she devises another plan. And this time she will send her son Jacob away to her family back in Padan Aram so he can find a wife for himself. And that way he will be protected from Esau until Esau gets over it. And then Jacob can return home, Rebekah thinks to herself. So Jacob heads off to Padan Aram, where Rebekah is from. And on his way there, running for his life from his brother, his murderous brother, he receives a dream from God. And in the dream, God promises Jacob that he will carry on the blessing that God had given to Abraham and that Abraham had passed on to Isaac. And now God is saying the blessing has passed from Isaac's generation to you, Jacob. And, you will be a blessing to those around you, and you will be blessed. Now, this is like a wild story, and it's definitely wildly entertaining. And I think that there's two things that I kind of want to focus in on that is amazing about this story. Firstly, it is a story about humanity. We find ourselves in all of the people of this story. As I read this story, and I'm not sure if you did this as well, I was just struck by how familiar it feels. All the cliches are here. Firstly, we have a passive father figure who favors the sporty son. Then we're introduced to the helicopter mum who favors the homebody, quiet son. Then we're introduced to a controlling and manipulative wife who undercuts her husband and really runs the household. I think this is where the character of Lady Macbeth found her origin, in Rebecca. And then we have these twins who have this intense sibling rivalry, the strong one being outsmarted by the cunning one. It's almost like every popular movie for the last 50 years found its core ingredients in this story. And I was telling Mia about all of these cliches, and she asked me if that made me think that the story was fake. Maybe this is a fictitious story. And I had to think about it for a little bit, but then it made me realize, actually, this story is real, because this is talking about the humanity that you and I both belong to. It's so familiar, isn't it, to hear a story like this? And it's chaotic. But that's where the second part of the story really fascinates us. God works out his plan through this chaos that we make. The crazy thing about this raucous story, where everyone is doing the wrong thing, is that God's purposes are being worked out in that disobedience. Isaac, in sin, tries to bless Esau, but the very act of his disobedience, God achieves his purposes through it. He has his man, Jacob, blessed. Now, this is like remarkable. He tries to overthrow the plan of God by blessing Esau, but in the very act of overthrowing God's plan, he actually enables God's plan. God outsmarts him. He usurps Isaac's words to achieve his purpose through them. It's like sat-nav, you turn the wrong way, but it always finds another way. And that's what God is like. It's a great comfort to us. God finds a way in this sinful world to work out his plans. We have a God who is able to bring about his purposes even through our disobedience. And we know that in the end, his will ultimately prevail. Amazing story. Hope you enjoyed it. See you next week.